Our speakers today are Adele Lott and Louise Winter from our Gun Safety Committee. In addition, we're happy to have a representative from the Pensacola Police Department that Elizabeth King will introduce. Mary Louise Winter joined the League last January and is a member of the Gun Safety Committee. She retired from teaching French at Pensacola High School and Educational Technology at Pensacola State College in 2017 and is spending her retirement traveling, reading murder mysteries, and watching old movies. Adele Lott was born in Detroit and graduated from Wayne State University. She went on to graduate school at the State University of New York, where she earned a master's in education and a certificate of advanced study in school counseling. She served 2 years with the Defense Department in Germany and then worked for 26 years with families in New York as a special education counselor, primarily with behaviorally disordered children. And she moved to Pensacola in 2017. So I'll turn the meeting over to them.
Thank you so much, Ellen. You're welcome. I've got my high heels on today, so hopefully I'm positioned correctly for the microphone.
Closer. Closer.
Okay, all right. There's a big green dot at the end of my nose. Good. Okay, so Adele and I are presenting this PowerPoint, so I'm going to tag team her at a certain point. But I wanted to remember to thank Ellen and especially Bill, because if we didn't have Bill, I'd be describing what these PowerPoint slides looked like, and it wouldn't be pretty. This particular PowerPoint was sent to us by the state, so there are several gun safety committees like our own around the state who are involved in this new Lock It Up program. And the Lock It Up program is kind of similar to what the moms tried to do several years ago when they started the Mothers Against Drunk Driving. They wanted to promote safe driving, and they wanted to educate the public. And so that's what we're trying to do too. We want to educate the public to keeping guns in a safe and secure location and give them information on how easy that really can be to do. So today the things that we'll cover are safe gun storage, gun violence statistics, which sometimes can be a little upsetting. We didn't put them in to shock you, but they are part of what we really feel we need to do to educate the public. We certainly have gotten an education by reading the research online and by the materials that the state has been so kind to share with us. The gun violence statistics often touch on children and firearms, as you might imagine, suicide, domestic violence, and a big problem in our state, gun theft. So, safe storage saves lives. Just common sense, when you look at this slide, you know that accidental shootings involving children could be eliminated if guns were kept in a secure and safe place. Oops, sorry. Domestic violence shootings, although you may not know anybody that it's affected by this, this is often a big problem in households where domestic violence is an issue. Suicides, homicides, and again, gun thefts. So we'll cover these today. Some statistics nationwide, nearly 40,000 gun deaths occurred in 2018. Domestic partners are killed every 16 hours using a firearm. Women in the United States are 20 times more likely to be killed with a firearm than other countries that have the same, are on the same economic par as the United States. So even though we are economically well off compared to many countries around the world, we're still more violent when it comes to guns. And of course, the saddest for all of us is children and teens. Annually, 1,700 homicides were committed in 2018 across the United States involving children and teens. So how does Florida stack up? And this is kind of interesting to note some of this information. Every 26 minutes, a gun is stolen. So that shows us that we're not doing a good job with safe and secure storage. That's because, of course, in Florida, you can have a gun in your car, so people throw it in the trunk, the glove box, on the seat, and then don't lock their vehicle. And critically, every 17 hours, a child is shot. So you can see that keeping the gun safe and secure definitely has an impact on us being able to improve these gruesome statistics of every 17 hours. How does Florida rank compared to other states? Well, these are number 1, number 2, and number 3, which we wish we hadn't won, but we did. In the nation, we have more cases of road rage involving a firearm than any other state in the union, okay? So I just drove back from Orlando yesterday and I smiled at everyone on the road, so. I didn't cut off anybody, including 18-wheelers this time, so I got back safely. Number 2 in the nation, leading cause of death is firearms for us in the state of Florida. That's really horrible. And number 3 in the nation, we're 3rd in the nation for the number of gun thefts. So you can see this gun safety issue is a timely one for the League of Women Voters to adopt. And our committee here in Pensacola Bay Area is really happy that we've gotten involved with this because it feels like something where we might be able to make some sort of an impact. So leading causes of death for children, these are the stats that, you know, aren't very pleasant to look at or read. But in 2016 across the nation, of course, motor vehicles were number 1 with more than 4,000, but there were more than 3,000 firearm-related deaths for children across the nation in 2016. So compare those to pediatric cancer, less than 2,000, and drownings, poisoning, or drug overdoses, both less than 1,000. So you can see it is a critical area for us to be involved in. According to this graph from the Tampa Bay Times, by the time a child in Florida is age 5, guns are the 2nd leading cause of death, and they're only outdistanced by motor vehicle accidents. However, by the time the child is 14, guns have caught up from being almost the same amount of deaths result from motor vehicles as from guns. So you can see we're not doing a good job, and we need to get the word out and hope that people will behave responsibly. We know that we can't control that, we can't force people to behave responsibly, but maybe we can help. We want to avoid these horrible, gruesome type headlines like this one, and we do have some strong advocates now that we didn't used to have in the past, and those are physicians, especially pediatricians. By law, at one point, they were prohibited from giving advice to the parents of their young patients about gun safety or quizzing them about guns in the home and what firearms there were, etc., etc. But that impediment has been removed, and so now it is one thing that the American Medical Association is urging their physicians, not just pediatricians, to do. And they have actually a free module online now at the American Medical Association website that the physicians can go through and receive a little certificate that they got this kind of training. You can imagine that regardless of what age you are, when you went through all those years of expensive education to become a doctor, this wasn't something that was part of your training or your education. But now, of course, it is. So things like recognizing common risk factors, communicating with parents and patients, firearm safety counseling, and also identifying if there is somebody in the household that may have a mental health related illness. what is going on with firearms in that household with regard to that person? Are they being kept safe? Are the rest of the people in the household being kept safe? And again, it's not that difficult a measure to take. Also, in Florida, one thing that the legislators are proud of is that they passed a statute that would try to protect children from access to firearms in the house. And of course, the statute is 790.174, and we've just summarized it quickly here. But it basically says that firearms have to be securely locked or in a location that a reasonable person believes to be secure. Yes, oh goodness is right. Except when a person is carrying the gun on their person, on their body. So this doesn't mean in your purse or your briefcase or your glove box or under the seat in your car. This means that when you are carrying it, in some kind of a holster or other item that you would use to secure your firearm to your body, it's a second-degree misdemeanor to violate this. And so you can see that, as most of you groaned, that the reasonable person language is the problem with this statute. Of course, that can be argued in many, many different ways under the law. So while they tried to do a good job with the statute to help protect children, they left that gaping hole that you can probably hire even a not-so-good attorney and have him drive a bus through. So safe storage options are many and varied. There are things like gun safes and cabinets that can be locked. There are all kinds of cases. There are gun racks that can be locked. There are trigger locks that can be purchased and other gun locks, like the small red one that sort of resembles a bicycle lock. If you're a bicycle aficionado, you might recognize that. And those are the ones that the league have recommended that we try to encourage people to use because they're so inexpensive and really pretty easy. But of course, you can't force people to be responsible, but you can encourage them to. Nowadays, if you buy a brand new gun, a gun lock comes with it. That doesn't mean that somebody is following up to make sure you use it, but you do get one. The problem is that many people buy their guns not brand new, so they might buy used guns at whatever venue, or somebody in their family may give them one. They might trade the gun for something else. But of course, naturally, we've got this gun theft issue where, lucky us, we're number 3 in the nation. So that's really a problem. So even if you did want to toss your firearm blithely in the trunk of your car, if it was locked and somebody decided that they wanted to steal it, would have to go through quite a bit of effort to then get rid of the lock. I'm sure it can be done, but maybe it would make them think twice before they help themselves to your readily available gun. So I'm going to turn the PowerPoint over to my colleague, Adele Lott, and she's going to discuss some of the critical issues that we touched on earlier. This way. You're welcome.
All right. Mary Louise did a great job. She's a hard act to follow.
Close.
I said Mary Louise did a great job. She's a hard act to follow. Okay, so some of our critical issues, one of the foremost is suicide. 20% of drug overdoses lead to death, but 85 to 90% of suicide attempts with a firearm end in death. Suicides increase each year in the US, and there's twice as many suicide deaths as car accidents. Access to a firearm increases the risk by 3 times. The risk is 10 times greater in the US than in other high-income countries, and there are more suicides in states with high gun ownership. Okay, suicides are impulsive, and that's why this is important. Most attempters act in moments of panic or despair. A study showed that 2/3 of suicide survivors said it was less than 1 hour from the time they first thought about suicide and when they took action. 25% said it was less than 5 minutes. If nothing else, that gun lock is a deterrent. Locking up firearms could lower the risk of impulsive suicide, and only 1 in 10 suicide survivors will try it again. Something I ran across just the other day from the New York Times, and not all of this is directly related to guns, but many of them are. More than 45,000 veterans and active duty service members have killed themselves in the last 6 years. That's more than 20 deaths a day. In other words, there are more suicides each year than the total American military deaths in Afghanistan and Iraq. That's staggering. Those most at risk are enlisted men under the age of 30. Suicide rates for active duty is rising. It's risen by 1/3 in less than 5 years. Okay, adolescent suicide, 4 times more likely in homes with a loaded, unlocked firearm. Okay, domestic violence. With a history of violence and access to a firearm, the risk of fatalities is increased. Presence of firearm in the home where there's violence sends a message to victims. The presence of a firearm in the home increases the risk of domestic violence victim being killed as much as 500%. Now in New York, in 2013, they enacted a law that requires a firearm owner to keep his or her firearm locked if he or she lives with a convicted felon, a domestic abuser, or a person with a federally prohibited mental health history. That sounds good, but I don't know how they're going to enforce that. Gun theft. Here's another little tidbit I found from Reuters. Mexico estimates 80% of the weapons used by criminals in Mexico come from the U.S. 80% come from the U.S. Most stolen guns are taken from homes and unlocked cars. Many are used in crimes by people prohibited from possessing guns. Safe storage of firearms could reduce gun thefts, which is why we have the Lock It Up program. And some more stats here. Lock It Up is about saving lives. Our goals are to educate the public on the danger of unlocked guns, and we are planning, after the first of the year, to place our bookmarks in pediatricians' offices first and foremost, then to follow up with government facilities, police stations, mental health providers, and family practitioners. But to do that, we need help. We are a very small group. In fact, right now, I think there's 3 of us. If you would like to help us, we have a sign-up sheet over at our table on that side. We're going to need all the hands that we can get to help with sending out all of those bookmarks. So, like Mad's Don't Drink and Drive campaign, this program aims to change the narrative and make everyone feel responsible for gun safety in their community. You can't unfire a firearm. Okay. We now have time for questions. I
Cards.
probably can't answer them. But someone else can.